YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for Gozyuger episode 4. So this honestly might be my favorite episode of the series so far. You know, this series has been very unique, very high energy, very quirky, very strange. I've talked in all the reviews so far about how it has this really weird rhythm to it, whether it's the action sequences or the humor. And it's funny because I feel like I'm in opposite world, or the mirror world, because usually I'm the one complaining about these types of shows and everyone's like, just have fun, and this time, I'm like trying to go into this with a new attitude and just kind of embracing it, being along for the ride. And surprisingly, the show has been fun for me, and also I'm very intrigued by so much of the mythology and world, but I see a lot of people that are annoyed and falling off of it, which is just like a funny reverse of roles. But I really like this episode because even though I have been enjoying the show so far, I'll admit the rhythm of it and the strangeness can be a bit much, and there hasn't been a lot of emotional grounding. And this episode kind of had that with the introduction of our Green Ranger character. Like with the previous characters, outside of that small little flashback with Red at the very beginning, and then him looking at the family photo in this episode, there hasn't really been any emotional storylines that kind of tether you to a character story. Blue and Yellow, we really just only have their kind of quirks in terms of like Yellow being eccentric and into Tegasword, Blue being an idol. Red, like I said, we touched on it briefly, but this one, we actually get kind of more of a full emotional backstory and motivation for Green Ranger, who, did he call himself Kijiro? I'm not sure what name he's going for, because he has two different names. I'm going to call him Kijiro for the sake of this review, so in the universe of episode 4 Dawson review, he's going to be called Kijiro, because he has a different name, but when he goes to school, he changes his name so that his grandson won't know that it's him. We pick up the episode right where we left off with an old man coming out of the Gozyu Eagle body. And initially my first thought was this was going to be a Cure You Violet situation where maybe this was the first person to wear this mantle and they're going to pass it on to somebody younger. But then I remembered we did see the proper young version in the first episode. But what it turns out is you have this old guy that's basically always kind of really strict and is also very much so dedicated his whole life to his family. As such, he feel like he missed out on his youth and just getting to do things just for fun. And as he said, be one of the party people. And when he forms the contract, he wants eternal youth. And for the purposes of the game and obviously the show, they temporarily grant it. So instead of it being like, okay, you'll be turned young at the end of all this, we'll turn you young now, and you get to keep it if you win, but right now you only get it during the game. But also you'll briefly become an old man unless you get eggs, which is funny. I'll be so curious how often they might use this older actor. I won't be mad at all if he reoccurs every now and then because I think it's really unique. Honestly, like I covered the trailer and the plot synopsis. I didn't follow every single little teaser after that or scour the internet for rumors, but I don't remember anything about this in the descriptions or the trailers. So I think this is a really interesting wrinkle in terms of, no pun intended, get it? Because he's old. Old stuff is dumb. It's like, just be new. I think it's really interesting because I like this idea of this older actor reoccurring. It adds an interesting dynamic, like I said. Interesting dynamic. And it adds a really interesting character motivation, and I couldn't help but think of several things in this episode. First thing that came to mind was actually the movie 17 again. I think it was with Zac Efron, and I think that was a remake of another older movie that with somebody that I think I'd seen that one too, but I don't know why the Zac Efron one was on my mind. But also I couldn't help but think of like young Goku and Daima and GT, except it's like so the opposite in a way, just because this character very much still behaves like an old man in this body, but Goku just behaves like Goku no matter what age he is. Anyway, so yeah, he wants to relive his youth and even going to school, and he wants to be, like I said, one of the party people. And it's so funny because there are stories like this, like 17 again, and I've seen other stories where you have an adult turn back into a kid, and sometimes you do get those like parent mannerisms come out. I think actually there was a joke like that in 17 again. I'm bringing up 17 again so much in this review, I did not expect that, but you know what I mean. But also, you see them become younger and slowly disappear into the younger personality and forget their responsibilities. But in the case of this, like, he has a hard time shaking that responsibility. Like, this one character is like, hey, you want to go party on the roof, man? He's like, the teachers are just trying to protect us students, you hooligan! And even later, when his grandson he's talking to as a friend, he's like, you can't be irresponsible, you street youth. It's just so funny to see. I think that's something that could wind up turning into a little bit of a cartoony bit, but I overall really like. And it's funny because after he scolds his grandson, he realizes he can't go back to his youth and he's always going to be an old man. And that almost felt like what would have been normally a complete series arc. Like you'd think that would have been his arc the whole show, of him realizing he just can't fit into this mold of a youth and then at the end of the series giving up on it. But then we loop back around when he talks to his grandson after he saves him to make him realize to not give up on his dream after the first try. So I actually just really like this dynamic. I think it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, whether he gets to stay young, decides to stay old, if it will turn into just kind of a one-off bit. But regardless, I'm willing to bet this will be good for some laughs. Also, we get a little bit of focus on Black Ranger. Honestly, I thought we were going to see her more from this episode. I didn't think she was going to be the focus, but I thought that she was going to kind of be teased like Green was last week. But we really just get one quick scene of her tailing this guy to find information about her missing sister, which is also yet another more emotional stakes storyline. And then she's attacked by him because, surprise, surprise, he has the Ryusoulger ring, and she has her stuff, but she can't transform for some reason, which will probably be explored next week. In fact, it definitely will. But she's saved by that Tokansu guy, who I didn't expect to see him again so quickly. I guess it makes sense because she's working for him right now for whatever purpose, but I think it's just because like Taya kind of left and then he kind of left. I thought they were leaving it off for them to appear later on. But I guess he's going to be more reoccurring regular, at least for this first section of the show. But he transforms into Don Momotaro and fights Ryusoul Red, and it's really funny to see, just thinking about all the fights between Sentais and writers and all the misunderstandings and shallow fights, how this is like a fight between just two characters that aren't even from either show. It's just kind of a weird thing, but it's also kind of neat and unique. He also then uses another Sentai ring power. We showed last week Don Momotaro using Jetman's power, but he uses the Time Ranger one, and the finisher transforms him into a figure like the show, and I believe it was a Sentai hero figure you actually can get on store shelves, or at least could back in the day. I thought that was so funny. And he winds up getting the Ryusoulger ring, which is going to wind up in the hands of Black next week. That was one thing, too, I've been thinking about is like the ring collection. I think this is the first time I've seen somebody collect a ring, because I was thinking about how episode 2 or 3 established the dynamic of like, we're going to work together, but only one of us can have all the rings. But every time they've defeated a monster or won, no one's collected any rings as far as I've been aware. So like, what's the point of these games against the villains if there's no ring at the end? I don't know. We'll have to see how that happens the first time a character gets a ring that's like a main character. Another reason I like this episode, because even though I've been enjoying the crazy a little bit, like I said, I admit it's a bit too much, and the craziness was just kind of sectioned off to the middle part of this episode with the party battle or whatever it was. That featured all the weird stuff. When Gozyu Eagle had his new resolve, he did like a weird song, but it was all just in that bubble. Everything else about the first part of the episode and the very last part of the episode felt very normal, which I think is needed. I like that the show is unique, and I don't necessarily want to see the weirdness go away, but I think this series needed this episode. It made things a little bit more grounded, could get you more invested in the emotional stakes, rather than it just being about like the fun and the silliness and the wackiness. And I hope we get to flesh out our other characters. At the end, when he goes to his grandson, he's like, I just found this note from your grandfather, says he's fine. Red's observing it, and like I said, looked at a photo of his own family, so we're setting that up a bit. And like I said before, with Black Ranger, we also have our emotional story of looking for her sister. We just need to get a little bit more out of Yellow and Blue. We did find out Yellow has a dad, because when they're trying to figure out this old man, they're like, well, everyone's got a dad. But you know what I mean? Like, I was going to say, we found out Yellow has a dad that's a doctor, because when they're trying to figure out this old man thing, 17 again, he's like, should we call your old man who's a doctor? He's like, no. He's probably too busy working on an evil writer driver like I am. I was just thinking about the George dynamic, because this character looks like George could be his brother, and he probably also makes evil rider belts, but their dad also makes evil rider belts. Anyway, I really liked this episode. I think it was good to actually have a more grounded feeling episode where I felt that the characters and motivations were more real people and not cartoons, but still with the fun, including the mecha battle, which flashed between all the formations we've gotten so far. I was surprised Green didn't debut, but I hope we continue this going forward. I hope we have more of a balance between the crazy silliness and the great action, but ground things a little more every once in a while. As right now, I think Gozyu Eagle is my favorite character. I think he's a pretty interesting and fun character. Anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.